All right, welcome to our final week of Mark as we get ready to dive into chapter 16 and wrap up this bulldozer of a book that moves through the gospel so quickly. I'm going to pray and then we're going to go ahead and get started, okay? Lord, thank you so much for your loving kindness. Thank you for the people that you chose to write down your words and share them with us. Lord, I thank you for your kindness and your grace and sending your son to die for our sins and to be raised to life again so that we could have a relationship with you. Be with us now as we move through the last chapter of this book. Let your words be in my mouth. Don't let it even fall to the ground, Lord Jesus. Let us hear the things that you want us to hear and change our hearts in the way that you want us to be changed. Be with us now in your name, I pray. Amen. All right. Chapter 15 that we went over last week walked us through Jesus' time of being delivered over. Remember? He was delivered over to Pilate after a wrongful persecution. Jesus was delivered to destruction, both of his character and his body. And then finally, he was delivered to death, in which Joseph had the courage to take him and bury his body. The world was now waiting in solemn expectation, holding its breath as the King of the universe lay in a tomb. In true Markan fashion, chapter 16 gets right to the point. The vindication of Jesus in his resurrection from the dead. And the question that we have been asking for the whole book will now be answered with an empty room and a rolling stone. Our Christology completed as the Savior of the world has awakened and risen from the grave. So let's turn our focus to Mark 16, 4 through 7 and dig in for a few minutes on what the scriptures want us to see. Let's read our verses. And looking up, they saw that the stone had been rolled back. It was very large, and entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe, and they were alarmed. And he said to them, "Don't be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you." Okay, let's talk about it. What's the context of these verses in this chapter? What's happening? You gotta talk, or it's gonna take us forever.
Ask more specifically. What do you want?
What is happening around these verses? Like, how did we get here? What's the context of the things that's happening before it?
He's been buried, but he's not been given all of the rituals.
Right. And what does the chapter open and tell us? Who's going to find him?
Mary.
Yeah. A whole bunch of Marys.
Mother
It's the army of Marys. They're going to find him, right? So that's our context. Jesus is dead. Joseph has buried him. The women have gone early on the morning after the Sabbath, and they're going to anoint his body with spices, right? Where do these verses take place? A tomb. Do you remember what city they're in? Right outside of, actually, the walls? Jerusalem. So we're in Jerusalem. We're right outside of the city walls. We've got all of the Marys. They're coming with the spices that they bought. What day is it? It's the day after Sabbath, right? So nobody could do anything yesterday. The whole world is waiting. That is our context. So what are some repeated words or phrases that we have in this passage? Yes, that's the first one that you should see. They saw he'd rolled back the stone, and they saw a young man sitting on the right side dressed in a white robe, and they were alarmed. He is risen, he is not here. See the place where they laid him, but go and tell his disciples, and there you will See him. See, saw, see, seek. All through the whole thing. Is there another one that we have?
He has, he is, him.
He has, he is, him, right? Always want to get those because we want to be reminded, who is this passage about? And not us, right? Don't insert yourself into the story. Even though we're walking along with the writer of the narrative, this is not about us, right? He.
There are 8 Jesus and his pronouns.
There are 8 Jesuses and his pronouns. Mm-hmm. Yes. That's the kind of stuff I like to hear. He. And that's all connected to Jesus of Nazareth. What else do you see?
I feel like he uses a lot of visual descriptors.
Visual descriptors.
Looking up.
Yes.
So you're like getting a sense of it. The stone was rolled back. He was sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe.
Yes. You're in the movie, right? Are you in the movie when you read this?
Yeah. And you feel like they don't really do that often.
No.
When they don't describe the scene as much.
Sitting on the right
Especially
side,
as quick as Mark is for him to like put all these descriptors and
dressed in a white robe. Okay, so visual descriptions. What'd you just say?
I just said as quick as Mark goes through things, the fact that he's putting all these descriptors in.
Yeah, almost like somebody actually was there and saw it, right? Right? Because this is a testimony. How many women showed up? How many does he
3.
mention? 3. How many people does it take to be a witness in the Bible?
3? I thought
3.
it was 2. No.
Well, depend. 2 or 3. 3, yeah. And when it came to women too, the fact that they used the testimony of women in all 4 Gospels is a really big deal because the testimony of a woman was not usually taken in any kind of a case like this. So you know, like they said the same things over and over again because all 4 Gospels have the women there with what they saw. What else do you see?
The fact that he named Peter
Oh,
as
separately.
well as the disciples.
Yeah, why you name that Peter separate? Where we go? Disciples and Peter. Why you different than the disciples? What's your place in the church, right? What else? Do you see kind of a progression of events? Right? Does that bring excitement to it? They get there, they look up, the stone is rolled, the tomb's not empty, but the person they expect to be in there is not the person that's in there. There's another person in there, and he is white light, right? So then we're all terrified. So then he says, calm down. But they don't calm down, right? There's a kind of a progression of events that move us very quickly from one thing to the next, right? In these short verses, it's kind of hard, I think, well, with the next one that's coming, but this one, what does this passage tell us about God? Does it teach you anything about God?
He said, it teaches us that our Father did not forsake Jesus.
Our Father didn't forsake Jesus. He did, but did he leave him?
No.
God didn't leave Jesus. And we know that because later, when it talks about him being raised, the 2 ways it talks about it is both in an active and a passive voice, right? So God raised him from the dead, and Jesus had the power to raise himself from the dead. He didn't leave him.
I think also like in the fact, you think of a few different times where you see that God sends like a messenger of some sort. Like the women didn't show up to an empty tomb with no explanation.
Yes. Yep.
And weren't left to question like, where is he? And God made that known to them, which I feel like is loving and helpful.
Yeah.
I thought so too. Anytime I see angels being sent for a message, everyone's like afraid of the angels, so you know that they show up in all sorts of crazy forms. This time they were not. They were in white robes. They were a man.
They were a man. Are they still terrified?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, but a little. There's no circling wings with 37 sets of eyeballs running in a circle, right?
It's the focus on Jesus.
Yeah, right. How's that getting in the tomb? How's that going in there? Oh gosh.
I think also in like just like that it's like it's God's plan because of how like
Yeah.
the particulars and the storyline, that's what I'm trying to come up with, like that it's his plan that's being fulfilled.
Storyline particulars. Sorry if I spelled anything wrong. I don't have spell check on the whiteboard. Yeah, right. He's not here. He's risen. What does that tell us about God? About Jesus? That he is God, right? And he did what he said he was going to do, and he is who he says he is, right?
His promises.
We have 500 witnesses in the New Testament that saw him after he was raised. How many hundreds, if not thousands, saw him as they were walking into the city past him outside of the gate? They saw him dead. All of them saw him dead, right? And you have 500 that see him. Jesus is who he says he is, and he did what he said he did.
I was gonna say, going back to the women being the ones that found him, like obviously that was God's plan from the beginning, like in his sovereignty. I don't think it was like, oh, how cool that it ended up being that the women got there first. Like I think that tells us something about like his love for women and how he wants to use them to also, they were the first. Why am I getting choked up? They got to be the first ones to say he's risen.
Yeah. At the end of chapter 15, who was the only one still there?
Yeah, they were the first.
The women.
I'm not saying women need to go preach, but I'm saying
No.
they were the first ones to proclaim the gospel.
No, I think
the gospel.
that is a reward.
Yeah.
Because when everyone else ran away, when all of his disciples except for John probably were hiding, it says there was an entire group of women who stayed. And God rewarded their faithfulness, right, and their courage by allowing them to be the first to see him and the first to know, right?
I think
That's-
it's cool because there's a special kind of love that like women have for the hurting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they were coming to take care of his dead body.
Yeah.
That's what they thought.
The word for women in the Bible that they explain as helpers is the same one that they use to describe God and his
Is there my daughter's middle name?
I was also thinking, I wonder, and this is just speculation, if the reason they said the disciples and Peter is because maybe he really wanted to be clear, like Peter might be feeling like I'm not his disciple anymore, not like I don't want to be, but I've crossed the line too far and there's no coming back for me. And so for him to say, and make sure Peter too, like maybe it's not saying the disciples and then Peter, who's not really my disciple anymore, but like make sure he's included because
Yeah,
he might not feel included.
This is a big in parentheses altogether, right? He's gonna feel like a big piece of trash, but he's included.
But he's still there.
What does this teach us about ourselves? Anything that you see about us as people or yourself that you can learn from this? This maybe is the harder part when we ask that. Sometimes.
It's just very loaded.
I think,
Yeah.
So it says that like, go and tell them like what you saw, yada yada, and then what you don't have up there is that they fled out from the tomb, and then they said nothing to anyone, and it makes me question like, would I listen to like what God is telling me to do?
Yeah.
Like would I follow his instructions?
Yeah, would I listen? I think that's a good question. And I think that is the point, actually, of this last chapter. Because it's weirdo, guys. It's a weirdo chapter. There's lots of speculation about the end of this book. And we'll talk about it just a little bit. But yeah, will we listen? Will we do what God tells us to? Go and tell. Right? Okay, good? You guys, yeah, yes ma'am.
And like one thought about how it affects how I view myself is that like God meets us in our emotions as they are, not what they should be. Like this is tongue in cheek, but I saw something that was like, if the disciples were Swifties, they would have figured this out sooner because Jesus dropped a lot of Easter eggs about the resurrection. Like they should have expected this and come rejoicing, but they came grieving, and God met them.
Yeah.
Oh.
So,
Well, and I think even in in their fear, the angel wasn't like just telling them the news. Like he was he tried to comfort
He
them
did try to
first.
comfort him, bless his heart.
He's like, I know why you're here.
Yeah, like
Jesus.
can you imagine being in the angel's presence and the angel's first words are not like, "Oh, I'm an angel." It's like, no, it's okay, calm down.
Isn't it great how they knew?
Oh, yeah.
Like, we don't have to explain who the servant guy is. This young man is like a word for a servant. Like, they knew immediately.
I think it's interesting to contrast that with the fact, though, that Jesus appears to the disciples and they don't know it's him for a little bit.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, hey,
It's a
man,
ghost.
we're just grieving our friend that died.
All right, we're good? All right, so the good news of Jesus has been proclaimed, and in chapter 16, this short group of verses gives us an odd and truncated version of what happened. It's presented, though, for those who have eyes that see through hearts of faith. And there's a contrast here of seeing faithfully and responding with blind unfaithfulness. That's our contrast. The heart that sees faithfully and the heart that is blind and unfaithful. So let's turn to 16:1, where we have our first observation to see where they laid him. To see where they laid him. When the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb, and they were saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb?" And looking up, they saw that the stone had been rolled back. It was very large. So first, let's talk about the stone. Most likely, Jesus had been buried in a tomb that was cut into solid rock. It's on the side of a hill. If you've ever been to Israel or Jerusalem, it's like all rock, right? So anything they did came out of rocks and out of caves. So his tomb would have been a very nice tomb. It was a tomb for the rich, right? Cut out of this side of a rock. And in front of the tomb, there would have been cut a divot, a lower depression of some sort. And then this massive rock would have been rolled over a little bit of a hill and down into the divot so it would sit and keep bandits and robbers out. And when we say these stones are heavy, we are talking that a normal stone that this would be talking about in the Bible would take around 20 men to move. But this one is even heavier, most likely requiring more than one squad of Roman soldiers to roll it away. They want you to understand the enormity of death held in. Okay? So when these women reach the place where Jesus had been laid, they're wondering to themselves, how would they get to their master? Because they knew the stone was too heavy for them to move. They would have been in shock to see the stone rolled away so early in the morning after the Sabbath. It basically, when they went, it's just light, like the sun isn't completely up. It's just light enough for them to see, right? And so there's no way that there would have been time for 40 or 50 men to get this stone out of the divot up over the hill and take him out. This was seemingly a miracle in itself after the weekend that they had just had. And naturally, what did they do? They went in to look in the tomb. And it wasn't empty, but the man they were expecting was not inside. Instead, they found a messenger. Verse 4 says, "And looking up, they saw that the stone had been rolled back. It was very large. 5. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe, and they were alarmed. Looking up, that word right there means recovering sight. It's like the blinders came off. Like the blind man whose eyes had been opened by Jesus, their eyes were filled with a revelatory sight of a stone moved away. And there they saw a young man, or a servant. That's the same word that's used when the women watched Jesus where he was laid. The word saw, right? So they saw the servant in the same way they had watched from afar to see where Jesus was. They discerned. They intensively acknowledged there is someone here, but he's not who we expected. And his appearance was alarming. Basically, it says it threw them into terrifying amazement. Listen, I don't know if anyone has ever said this to you before, but angels are not cute little toddlers floating around with wings. As a matter of fact, in the Bible, every time a person sees an angel, they are so terrified. Most of the time, they fall down as if they are dead. Right? Don't watch the pictures that they paint. They're terrifying. And it says he's robed in white, or he is wrapped in or arrayed in this type of stole that was fit for a king or a person of military rank. This is a person of authority who is able to command, and that is a big deal for what he says in just a moment. Robed in white is actually not just a brilliant white, but a brilliant light. It says he's so bright because he was robed in light, shining the same way Jesus had on the Mount of Transfiguration. And that's what's their response? They're thrown into absolute terror. That's the word there. They're thrown into terror. When they realize that they were standing in the presence of God's messenger in the space of an empty tomb, they were terrified. So let's talk about the empty tomb. Verse 6 says, and he said to them, do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. The next thing that always happens when people see a messenger of God is that they have to be gently calmed, right? Don't be terrified. I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be for all the nations. You seek Jesus of Nazareth. This idea of seeking was that they were looking for him to worship. That seek is the idea that's related to worship. But he is not here. He is risen. He has awakened from the dead. He's not in this place of the dead. He is now among the living. And it's just like he's been telling you. God has vindicated him before his accusers, and he has walked out of this grave. See the place where they laid him. The temple of the living God has been destroyed and raised again in 3 days. Our suffering servant of the cross has been crowned as king. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him again, just as he told you. Let's talk about the word go. Go means to lead under or lead away. It means go away or depart, but you do it underneath of someone else's authority. It implies a change of situation or location, often dictated by another person's command. Go because he is going before you. He is leading forward, and you will see him. You will behold him. You will look at him intently, just as he has told you. Friends, do you know that we can move and go and lead because the one who has led before us is not in the place where they put him? Do you realize that the one with the same power to lay down his life and take it back up again says that he is going before his disciples, and we have been commanded to follow? You and I are commanded to lead as we follow. Do you know that? So what was their response? He tries to calm down. Their response? They flee in terror. Verse 8 says, and they went out and they fled from the tomb, for trembling and astonishment had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. Terror, trembling, and astonishment that had seized them. It's quaking with fear and a throwing of the mind. It had literally gripped them or taken possession of their brain. The don't be alarmed didn't work. It didn't work. And this sent them fleeing. They were put to flight in terror. And wait for it, there was silence. They said nothing to nobody. It's the same Greek word repeated twice in a row. They said nothing. They were terrified. They didn't know what to do, and they ran away. I think sometimes it's almost comforting to know that the disciples in the Bible were not superheroes. They were just normal people like you and I. On the other hand, I think it can give us this feeling, along with the disciples, that's along the lines of who then can be saved. Doesn't it kind of feel that way? Like, will we ever get it right? Will I ever stop sinning? Will I ever have courage to talk and share the gospel as I've been commanded, just like the women were commanded? And I think here in this moment, one of our comforts may be with Paul in 2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10, where it says, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weakness, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weakness, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. These women were normal people, and they were weak before their Savior. But I'm so thankful for Jesus and the sufficiency of his grace. We're going to need it now, because when we get to verse 9, we see a problem. We see a problem. Verses 9 through 20 are not found in the oldest of the biblical manuscripts that we have. And they're not present in the most prominent translations we used. In general, verses 9 through 20 are probably not original to the text. It's probably not part of the original scroll or codex that Mark wrote. Sinaiticus has intricacies that lead towards knowing that there's something there. Vaticanus has space to indicate that the scribes are aware of the content. But Alexandrius is the first major book to attest to verses 9 through 20. So there's something going on, and the idiosyncrasies that they make leave room for the scribes to have space as they gather more information. But in general, they appear to be syncretizing features by later scribes or copyists that are an attempt to smooth out the abrupt and enigmatic ending of Mark's book. 9 through 20 are present in 95% of the copies that we have of Mark, because they are still true events, but they're all an amalgamation and a truncation of happenings from Luke, John, and even Acts. And we have to stop and say that then if it's the case that this is the ending of the original book of Mark, where does that leave us? Because it leaves us hanging at the end of a narrative where everybody ran away. Jesus was the only one faithful to his task. The sheep have been scattered. And I think maybe the only way we can resolve it is that Mark is putting the question before the Gentile church that he is writing to, what will you now do with the gospel? Will you go and proclaim it? Will you do the job of the disciples and the women that they were called to but failed at? What will you do? Another thing we can do is seek to see what it is the scribes and the copyists wanted us to understand about the gospel. Why did they add 9 through 20? And I think the first thing that they wanted us to see was his appearance. They wanted us to see his appearance. We know from the other gospels that we don't just have the words of an angel, we have eyewitness accounts of his physical presence. First, he went to Mary Magdalene. The word appearance here means to bring forth into the light. Jesus walked out of the darkness of death and into the glorious light of making himself known. Peter says, "You are the Christ." And he says, "You're right. Here I am." Mary doesn't miss it this time, right? She missed it the first time. She ran away. She fled. But it says this time she goes, she leads over or departs under his authority and reports the news that she's seen him and that he's risen. She finds her redemption in her second chance, and she doesn't miss it this time. And then it says he appeared to some unknown disciples. They were leading over, departing under someone's authority, and going into the countryside. And something strange happens, though. It says that he appeared in another form. What does that mean? Well, the idea is that he appeared in a form that was of a different quality. Not of the same nature that he was before his crucifixion. Honestly, I don't know what that means other than when Jesus arose, he was changed. And these disciples, they went back and they reported it to the rest of the other remaining ones too, but something terrible happens with the remaining 11 when we see their unfaithfulness. The remaining disciples are together somewhere in the city. It says they are weeping and mourning. They are wailing aloud and sobbing when Mary finds them. Why? Because they were looking for a political king, and when he died, their hopes and dreams of a resurrected nation betrayed their need for a resurrected Savior. They missed it. They totally missed it. And it says when Mary told them that he had risen, they had no belief. The word there is literally, they were unfaithful. Every prophecy he had given them, every word of things to come, every encouragement from the transfiguration to the tail end when he commanded them to stay strong, they hadn't believed any of it. And they were found unfaithful. Jesus makes his final appearance to the remaining 11, and instead of there being a reunion of joy, they are met with Jesus's rebuke. He made himself manifest right in the middle of them. And once again, at a table where they were given instructions over bread and blood, they are now given a rebuke and a railing by the resurrected Son. They have been filled with unbelief. They had a hardness of heart. The hardness of heart to not think something to be true. And in this few verses, we are faced with the same words as we received in Mark 10:15, our divorce passage that keeps coming back up over and over again, a comparison to the faithless generation of Moses and the conniving institution of the Sanhedrin. They were the same. Men of unbelief. Friends, what we believe in our hearts affects what we will allow in our mind. And what we allow in our mind affects how we will respond to our world. Their unfaithful heart told their mind, no way. And their mind told their peers, we don't believe you. That didn't happen. He's dead. We saw him. We know he was hanging on that cross and that he died. Thankfully, his rebuke led to restoration, didn't it? His rebuke led to restoration, and we see here our mission immediately following. Our mission is what? To proclaim the gospel. Our mission is to proclaim the gospel. He says, go, lead over, the same word we've used every time. Go, go, go. Lead over under my command, under my authority to where? All the world. No limits. Doing what? Proclaiming the gospel. The good news that the servant king has come, that he has paid the penalty for sins and has been vindicated by the Father as God, that he was raised up both passively and actively, nailing death to the cross, forever tearing apart the dividing wall of separation between us and the Father. That is what you preach. Well, who do we preach it to? It says the whole creation, the original formation. Because if people won't cry out, the rocks will, won't they? You go and you tell it everywhere. All of humanity given to us and put in the realm of our influence, right? So that we will see belief and baptism. We want people to believe and be baptized. It says whoever believes, whoever has believed and continues to keep believing. This is an active belief that doesn't stop. They are baptized. You know what baptized? It's baptizo. It means they are submerged or dipped. Some say dipped repeatedly. That would make for a grace. Right? Right? And what will happen? They believe and they shall be saved. This is a future salvation and it is a passive salvation. It is not them who save themselves. They are saved by God. A way has been made. You are in the already and the not yet of your salvation history. You are saved and you are being saved. You are sanctified and you are being sanctified. If only you believe. Why? Because his grace is sufficient. We also see what the end of unbelief is. The end of unbelief is unfaithfulness. It's the same word used for the response of the disciples. They are condemned. They are judged worthy of punishment. And the fiery pits of hell await those who reject the gospel in this lifetime. They are condemned. And I know that we don't preach fire and brimstone sermons anymore, but let me tell you, there needs to be some kind of vocabulary in your life for the condemnation and hell. Because they are real. And apart from the salvific work of Christ, it is where those who are unfaithful will spend eternity. But I think we must agree here with Charles Spurgeon when he says, if sinners be damned, at least let them leap to hell over our dead bodies. And if they perish, let them perish with our arms wrapped about their knees, imploring them to stay. And if hell must be filled, let it be filled in the teeth of our exertions, and let no one go unwarned and unprayed for. Friends, if they go to hell condemned, don't let it be because you didn't tell them about Jesus. we preach a gospel of goodness and grace in the face of unbelief. That is our mission. And along with it, we are given certain spiritual signs. Supernatural faith. Signs are marks. They are ceremonial indications that something has changed. And they accompany or they follow after those who continue to keep believing, those who have faith. This is the opposite of the response of the disciples. They paint a picture at their heart of an unstoppable gospel. It's hard for our westernized pseudo-scientific minds to wrap our heads around the things that are written here in Mark, isn't it? They feel fantastical. They feel somewhat unbelievable, even though there are those of us in this room who have experienced miracles personally in our lives. The reality, though, is that God's mission for us will not be hindered by principalities or powers. It will not be hindered by an inability to communicate. It will not be hindered by the poisonous schemes of evil people, because God has crushed the head of the handled snake. And we see here in the final verses of Mark our true hope. That number one, Christ ascended. Just as his body was raised from the grave, it was raised to heaven, where we have Jesus appointed. It says he sat down at the right hand of God. That is an appointment or a conferring of a kingdom to a ruler. And if we remember all the times we've talked about in Exodus and the other books, that God did things by the right hand of his power. Where is Jesus sitting? At his right hand. His dunamis. Jesus is God's right hand of power that he uses all through the Old Testament. Jesus got the keys to the kingdom, guys. And then, through the work of the Holy Spirit, Christ attended. He was present. The Lord worked with them. How? Because the Helper had come. And the Lord confirmed the message. How? With more accompanying signs. So in the end, this is our hope. Our hope is that in this final moment, with the women in the tomb, the repeated question asked over and over again through the book of Mark, who is this? Is answered when the angel invites us to look inside with him at an empty tomb. He's not there, for he has risen, just as he told you. Jesus, our suffering servant, was vindicated by God and raised from the dead, just as he said. And he leaves you and I with the same question that the ending of Mark leaves us as we are staring into an empty tomb. Disciple, what will you do with the good news? What will you do with the good news? Any questions? Thoughts, encouragements?
Why do you think they felt the need to complete Mark with this?
Oh man, there's like 5 different endings, guys, that they have. So there's the internal evidence that says, and most people believe it ends at 8. There are some people who say that it's the back of the book and there's a page that was lost. And others think persecution was really heavy at the time that Mark was writing it. and that maybe he died before he was able to finish it. And the reason that they say that is because that final sentence where the women flee ends with the word gar, which means for. So like for, and then something else is gonna happen. But evidently, there's other ancient writings at that time from famous people, I can't remember which one now, that also end their story with the word for. And so they're like, no, either way. But I think at the end of the day, they wanted people to know that he got out. So somebody took it upon themselves to add it in a small snippet of what happened. But the language used, the words used, the way that 9 through 20 is written is completely different from the rest of Mark. Like, that go word is still there, but in general, someone else was like, we gotta finish the story. And it's left in there, like I said, because it's all true things, but it's true things that they pulled out of the other Gospels. Yeah, there's a different short ending than this that adds in a verse 9 and 10 that says something totally different. So most people say it's either the verse 8 ending, or then there are people who do believe that 9 through 20 was original. And they have their reasons for that. But the main view is it ends at 8, and then there's a group of people that say no, it's 20. But those are the two major views. There's like 3 other in the middle, but most people don't believe those. Yeah, but can you imagine being hanging like that? Here's the idea. The idea is that he could leave it at verse 8 because he is writing to Gentiles. Don't be like the Jews. Don't be like the disciples. Who will you be? Are you going to respond like this? Or are you going to respond like you're supposed to? So some people think that kind of is his, because he just pounded the whole thing, right? And he's not left anything out when people didn't do what they were supposed to. We already know that the book of Mark has a pretty low view of the disciples. And as we go further on in the book, it gets even lower. Like when you end chapter 16, verse 7, where he literally compares them to all of the Sanhedrin in the beginning of the book. That Markin, this is why he gave it to you, because of your hard heart. Like his view was pretty low of the disciples. Yeah.
What about where they left the tomb and they didn't say anything for they were afraid? But in Luke it says that they returned from the tomb and told all these things to the 11 and to all the rest.
Yeah. I think that there was a bit of time before that happened. Like the idea is that first they were terrified.
They didn't say a word.
They didn't know what to do. They didn't say anything to anybody.
That makes sense.
And then they went afterwards. And I don't know how much time that is in between, but their initial response was not gladness and joy. It was terror and fleeing.
Do you think part of the reason why it specifically says like they didn't say anything was because they didn't say anything to like Roman officials also?
I don't know about that.
Like, not saying that they were also
Like they didn't want the Romans to know that he was gone.
Yeah.
One of the books says that they tried to make it like they had taken him, but too many people saw him for that to.
Well, the Romans tried to do
Yeah,
that.
that's what I'm saying. The Romans. Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute.
Sorry, I'm saying the Romans. Yeah, that the Romans tried to fake that they took his body.
Well, because the Romans came after the women to like check on it, and they're like, oh, it's empty. Like,
I was gonna say, wasn't there guards originally?
Yeah, they fled.
They fled.
They fled. And when they fled and went and told him, they were like, well, let's just tell him that we moved his body so that we don't get killed. So that we don't die, because
So
Roman
we're not in
soldiers who
trouble.
failed their job die.
well, and it said he was going to Galilee. How? I'm not good at geography now. So let alone how long would it have taken to get from Jerusalem to Galilee?
Oh, I don't know that.
Like a couple days?
Anybody
Like,
got
couple
somebody
hours?
ask Siri. How far is the trip from
How
Jerusalem?
many miles is it from Jerusalem to Galilee?
Oh goodness.
I was like, it's
in the back,
5,000
on the
miles.
back of the book, this is
Oh,
Jerusalem,
Yeah,
this is Galilee.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I'm gonna bet it was a 2 or 3 day trip.
Yeah.
so you had 2 to 3 days to get to Galilee and, you know, contemplate, oh, I probably should have told
So with it being that Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days, they didn't come on the Sabbath because it was the Sabbath.
Right.
If it had not, like, let's say this all happened on a Monday, would they have come the very next day to do what they were gonna do? But they waited a day because it was the
Because
Sabbath.
of the Sabbath. Because God works out everything in His perfect time.
Yeah, which also kind of speaks to, like, I mean, just, I know they took the Sabbath really, really seriously.
Yeah.
But to like even say, cause you know that one more day dead is one more day decaying and smelling and
Yeah.
rotting, and that goes pretty quickly when you're in the desert and heat, and that's how it was.
Yeah.
And so just to think that, God in His wisdom, like, had just worked everything out.
Yeah.
For every prophecy to be fulfilled, and like that He would die on a Friday, and that He would be raised on a Sunday.
Yeah, like He's dead. We
Yeah.
got 3 days a day.
Yeah, I think also like Erica talks about it, or Monica, that like the Saturday, the waiting period, like confirms it for like a lot of like the people of the time. Like it wasn't like, oh, he died Friday night and he was raised Saturday morning. So like, did he actually die? Like, no, there was a whole day like that went by.
It goes back to the question, I think we talked about this last week. If it's real, it changes everything. Right? So, do we functionally believe that it's real? Like, does it change who we are? I didn't talk about it, but that going out in the world and proclaiming the gospel, the idea there is that a permanent change has been produced, right? And so if Jesus really raised from the dead, that changes how we live and who we are. It should, right? Even in our fallibility as humans, that changes how we respond and how we live and how we move and how we breathe in this world.
I think for me, it really speaks how the disciples walking with Him like miss it. How many times do we miss Jesus in our lives?
Yeah.
Then it makes me think of creation, and then how like I don't know why, but Tangled made me think of it with the like floating lantern light. She's like, it's meant for me. And I think about all the things in creation, like what were meant for us to see on a daily basis, and how many times in those things do we miss Jesus in that.
Yeah. That's a good word. All right, anything else? Final closing thoughts? Thanks for being with me. Thanks for sticking it out.